When you have back-to-back races, it's unsurprising when the result is the same. Max Verstappen has now extended his lead to 32 points after a dominant victory in Austria. Welcome back to the Grid Talk podcast. My name is Lou Edwards and I'll be your host for the 2021 Austrian Grand Prix review. Joining me today are F1 podcaster Philip Mathew.
Hello.
And the president of the Fernando Alonso Eyebrows Appreciation Society, it's Sam Thatcher.
That's a new one. Hi guys. Afternoon.
That's good.
Yeah, a bit tired from the celebration from the football yesterday, but it's good to have some Formula One to watch in the afternoon.
Well, we'll start with the man on form, Philip. Max Verstappen. His first ever career Grand Slam. Pole position, fastest lap, race victory, led every single lap. He couldn't put a foot wrong this weekend, could he?
He hasn't put a foot wrong in the last 3 weeks, and they made the comment, I think Crofty made it in the telecast late there, Louis, that I think if not for a few laps in the last 5 races, he would have 5 in a row. Right now, he's at a different level. He's taken his skill and he's taken his driving talent to that level. His dad, who never had that ability, pushed him in this way, and Red Bull with all their things, putting all their eggs in this basket. This is what it was about. To have a car and have this driver perform in this way. And Max Verstappen is he can't miss right now. They have the best car on one lap pace. They have a great car on starts. They switch on tires well. It does everything well. And then you have a driver that isn't making any mistakes and is feeling comfortable and is able to do whatever he wants. And fundamentally, he's opening cans on people, and he's humbling Mercedes at the moment. And it's not really, we'll see what happens. I think this next, before the summer break, is basically the line. British Grand Prix, it's Lewis's house. He wants to do well at home. It's going to be full fans. If they can't respond at Silverstone, and if they can't respond at Hungary, which is one of Lewis's greatest tracks, it's basically game over. It's only 9 races into the season, and it's hard to say that 3 wins in a row and a 32-point lead. It's just over a race win now. It's getting close to game over, but it really is starting to get there. You've got nearly full. You have a full race in first and second in the constructors for Red Bull as well. So for Max Verstappen, the Red Bull team, Honda in their so-called final year again, they're hitting on all cylinders, and you got to just give credit to them, getting off to the great start, dominating the race, building the gap, utilizing Lando Norris well, Lewis having his problems, and then it kind of affecting the race itself. But credit to Max Verstappen. I don't see where or when this is going to stop. So we might be seeing a brand new world champion for the first time since good old Nico in 2016, and Red Bull's first world championship since Seb Vettel's 4 in a row back in the early noughts there.
Yeah, since 2013. Philip was kind of, hit the nail on the head with the fact that, Verstappen now has a 32-point advantage in the World Championship. Red Bull have a 44-point advantage over Mercedes in the Constructors' Championship. With this epic run that Red Bull have gone on, it really starting to sort of feel like it's now Verstappen's championship to lose rather than his to win.
Yeah, no, this last kind of run that he's been on has really shifted the kind of tide of the championship in his favour, because obviously in the start of the season they were kind of trading blows. There was Mercedes on top for a bit, then there was Red Bull, but this triple header has definitely swung it in Red Bull's favour, and as Phil alluded to, it really is starting to look like it's going to be Max's to lose, and he might run away with it. Yeah, the next race in Silverstone is pretty crucial. Yeah, today, just like last week, never looked in any danger of not winning. Was miles clear, could do the pit stop at the end to get the fastest lap for the extra point. So add insult to injury really for Mercedes. Yeah, just absolutely clinical performance from Max, and once again showing why he may well be the best driver on the grid in many people's eyes.
Yeah, it definitely is certain to look that way. Now, Philip, on to second place, Valtteri Bottas. Very much a damage limitation place for Mercedes today. You could say he potentially lucked into that second place with Norris's penalty, and then also with the damage that Lewis had, that he sustained during the race. But, it was kind of a nothing race from Bottas. It was he was very much behind Lewis for a lot of the race. He was behind Lando for a lot of the race. Yeah, and he just managed to hold on to second place until the end of the race, really.
I mean, we spend a lot of time on here ragging on Porridge, and it's for good reason. But the fact of the matter is, here today, they told him to stay on the original plan, which probably wasn't the best decision. I think they could have went to an alternative strategy, maybe go to a two-stopper, because he had such a huge gap to the midfield that they could have went and done something to try to change some sort, to put some deviation into this deal. Whether it was Lando having to pit, or whether it wasn't really going to be about Max, but it was about making Lando pit earlier. They didn't do that. Then Lewis ran over the curbs, did some damage to the back of the car. And he was basically dog slow, and you had Valtteri catching him, and they had to let him pass. It wasn't, there's no way that they were going to be able to maximize points if they didn't let him pass Lewis there. In the end, Lewis was going to finish fourth either way. It was a case of whether Valtteri was going to finish second or third. If you let it hold up long enough, Lando was going to pass both of them and he was going to finish second. So they did what was right. I don't think that in Valtteri's case they maximized his race, which isn't shocking because Mercedes for the last month and a half basically have not been maximizing anything. They could have given, I don't know. I really don't know. He wasn't going to win the race, obviously, but I think there could have been more out of that race for Valtteri if he was given the opportunity. But Mercedes is so busy stepping on themselves right now at the moment. Second place for what he's been doing this year. He's now back into the battle for third in the World Championship. He is only 12 points out right now of Checo after his nightmare of a race today. And Lando's there too. So, I mean, it's a battle again. It's for the first time this year, it looked like Valtteri woke up. So, other than when he qualifies. And so, I don't know. I think second place, best thing for Mercedes for him to actually protect after Lewis's issues.
But it was a lot of help for Mercedes, obviously, to hold on to that second place. They couldn't afford to lose it. To the person who came in P3, Sam, Lando Norris, had an exceptional qualifying yesterday, started second. Of course, he was hampered by his penalty. I guess I have to ask you the first question first. Was it a penalty?
It's a difficult one. In my personal opinion, I'd say no. I think it's pretty harsh. I mean, if we're given penalties for that, why are we even racing? Because it just seems like they're not allowed to race at the moment. I mean, Lando didn't even force Checo wide at all. He just literally went onto the gravel track because he tried to hang a move outside. And as we saw last year with Hamilton and Albon, that never ends up well for the person on the outside there. So if I was Checo there, I would have just waited until maybe the next lap or when DRS comes along, because you've got the faster car. There's no need to be attempting to move like that with the risk. And as we saw, it pretty much ruined the rest of his race. But yeah, as for Lando, once again, as with every race this season, he's just been incredible. Yeah, I believe that was the first time McLaren on the front row of a grid since 2012 or 13. Yeah, he's just been so good this season. His first 2 years, he kind of joked around a little bit, did all the memes and everything. But this year, it feels like he's really kind of come of age in the team. He's properly leading the team now. And just leading into in his new era of McLaren, probably coming back to the top of the grid, really. And I think in tracks like Monza and these kind of power tracks, I really think they could do a lot of damage to the likes of Mercedes and Red Bull like they did today. But yeah, Lando once again held off Lewis for what seemed like an eternity, really. And got Lewis actually said to him, "Oh, he's such a great driver in the middle of the race." I mean, you can't get more high praise than that, being called a great driver by one of the greats of all time during the middle of the race when he's trying to overtake you. So, yeah, just incredible from Lando again, and definitely a contender for driver of the season so far.
Yeah, definitely. Now, into fourth place, we have, of course, we do have Lewis Hamilton. Philip, he was kind of unlucky because after he got past Norris, he seemed to really hold down that P2. It's the place that he needed for this World Championship fight. But I think it was running wide at turn 10 a few times, and then also he had that moment at turn one. It clearly damaged something to his floor. And that was kind of race over. They pitted again. It didn't work. He couldn't make any inroads on Norris at all. And they ended up 20 seconds behind him. It was kind of a race to forget for Lewis, even a weekend to forget.
Yeah, it's been, like I said before, Louis, I mean, for the last month and a half, ever since the Spanish Grand Prix, when they did the undercut on Max and kind of stole that win, it's went south for Mercedes. They didn't have anything at Monaco, obviously, so you could throw that away. Fine, one off is okay. Max blows the tire at Baku while dominating and was going to win. Lewis has the chance to go and steal the championship lead back and blows the first corner on the green-white checkered. And then France, their strategy wasn't as good as Red Bull's or Pace, and then Max passed them on the racetrack. And then the last 2 weeks have been a joke. So this is the worst that Mercedes has looked in this era, honestly. And in the flip side, and in turn, Lewis is struggling too. It doesn't seem like the car is doing what he needs it. It doesn't seem like the tires are really acting in the manner that he needs them to. They're not switching on the way he needs them to. So in that sense, this whole weekend was a waste. I mean, he had no qualifying pace. He almost got out qualified by Checo there. He would have been fifth. Then the start, he got up there, but he almost was passed by Valtteri. I mean, he's one of the greatest of all time, as Sam said, and that isn't going to go away. But this is a humbling year for Lewis. It reminds me of the years at McLaren after his world championship. First couple of years of McLaren, where they kind of had pace at times, but then really they couldn't put it all together, or something would happen. And, he would win races, but he wasn't consistently able to accumulate points. This was one of those times, and it's been that kind of run that this is where you lose world championships. And for the last however many years since 2014, even when he had a bad day, he'd finish like third. Like that was what it was. Like he'd always finish on the podium. He wasn't even a factor today, for outside of a few laps, but he wasn't a factor for the race win. So reset, go home, see if he can win at his house at two of his best racetracks. Is go to Silverstone, win at home, or go to Hungary and somehow or another beat on a short track, beat Max Verstappen. Because that's what has to happen, period. He needs to win. He needs to start winning races again. He needs to get to 100 very quickly, or else Max Verstappen is going to have a pretty clear sailing in the second half of the season to his first world championship.
Now into fifth place. Carlos Sainz, Sam, started outside of. He started, I think it was P10 after the penalties. Opted for the hard tyre at the start, went very long into the race, did about 2/3 of the race on that hard tyre, switched to the mediums, and you can't say it wasn't a great recovery drive from Sainz today.
Yeah, I mean, we seem to be saying this quite a lot about Carlos and the Ferraris in general this year. They seem to have this kind of knack of just getting the results where you might not think they're supposed to get it. But Carlos showed a great pace on the hard stint, as you said, to take it so long into the race. I mean, he had fresh tyres at the end. And then they got team orders to take Leclerc out of the way, which was right cool at the time. Different strategies, signs on much fresher tyres. And then, just managed to get Ricardo at the end there. Pretty easy move with the DRS on on the back straight, where we saw a lot of the moves being done today. Just nailed him on the outside, and that was it. But no, again, very good points for Ferrari in their fight with McLaren for the all-important third spot in the constructors, I believe. I mean, they're 19 points behind now. They've just got to start kind of like trying to beat Norris, because it always feels like they're beating Ricardo at the moment. They can't quite match what Norris is doing, and that's kind of the big difference in this fight that they're having right now. But no, yeah, Carlos to go from P10. Of course, he qualified outside the top 10 with all the penalties. Was able to start on a hard tyre, which really worked in his favour. So he made the most of that today to go from P10 to P5 on the one-stop strategy around Austria is a great result, and he didn't have a great weekend last weekend. I don't think, can't remember. So yeah, it's good for him to get this result, and more important points for Ferrari and 5 McLaren. We'll see where it goes from here. Yeah, it's a good fight really, because it's quite entertaining to have both of these teams that are like obviously really historic fighting each other towards the top end of the grid again.
Yeah, sure. It does feel like the days of old. Yeah, some people say it's definitely a little bit before my time though. But it wasn't Sainz who finished 5th on the racetrack, Philip. It was Sergio Perez, but thanks to his a mass of penalties that he picked up during the race, he came along and overall finished 6th. He got, of course, 2 penalties for forcing Charles Leclerc off the track. Do you think those penalties were justified?
I mean, I think Derek Warwick and that whole entire Stewart's crew spit the bit with the way they managed Friday and Saturday with all the backing up and stuff like that, and they screwed the pooch on Fernando Alonso because he got completely effed in qualifying by Sebastian Vettel, and he would have been in the top 10 probably, and who knows what his race would have been like if he had that chance. And they didn't do they really did not respond to that. They didn't respond to it all weekend. So then they just went overboard today. Yeah, Checo did not make the corner in turn 4 the one time on Charles Leclerc. The second time, that's wishful thinking that you're going to go on the outside on over there. I think it's off of 7, 8, whatever. The
6.
Second 6, whatever. Yeah, there's not that many corners. It's not like most Formula One tracks. I should be able to know how many corners, but my fault there. That was wishful thinking on that. I don't think that. I mean, the Lando Norris thing was iffy. I don't think all of those deserve penalties. Maybe. I think the one where he drove into Charles Leclerc was a 5-second penalty. The other 2 were not penalties. But, argy-bargy going on at races is not unusual. The fact that they decided to come around and call as many penalties as they did today was kind of mediocre. It definitely ruined Checo's race. He had good pace, honestly. Who knows? And they said it. Crofty and Paul said that if he had not had all that going on, I think he probably would have gone. They would have gone a 1-2 finish, and it would have been a total nightmare for Mercedes because they would have lost even more points in the Constructors' Championship. So, I mean, I think he'll shake this off, Checo, and he'll go to Silverstone, try to clear his head, and I think he'll be back to I think he's starting to figure out the qualifying. He's never been the greatest qualifier, but I think he's starting to figure out qualifying. He's always been great in the race, and I think Silverstone and Hungary will be more ideally suited to what he wants and needs. And he's in a battle for the third in the Drivers' Championship too, so he's going to have to look at both battling Valtteri and Lando. So a rough outing today for Checo. It's not in his usual behavior or whatever, driving style, but I think he'll be all right in the long term.
Yeah, this is not going to be only penalty talk, of course, that we'll have. A lot of drivers received penalties in this race, and as is now Latifi, Leclerc, Sainz, Mazepin, Giovinazzi, Ricardo, Gasly, and Perez have all been summoned to the stewards for, I think it was for not respecting the double yellow flags for the Kimi and Vettel incident. And I believe George Russell has also been summoned to the stewards for moving in the braking zone. So, so a lot of the results that we may run through today could be just completely just null and void in it.
It's all meaningless. Let's just start again.
It's all meaningless. Well, hopefully for our next person, Daniel Ricciardo, it isn't meaningless. P7 made a decent strategy work for him. Been a pretty rough time for him at McLaren recent, but 6 points. It's not a bad stepping stone for Ricciardo, given how poor some races have been in the not so distant past.
He seems to be kind of getting on top of the car on race day at the moment, because he's still qualifying kind of below where they want to be, because P13 for McLaren is just not where the car can be or should be at all. Because obviously look what Norris did this weekend, put on P2, but Ricardo P13. There's got to be some sort of issue with the car that he's not quite home with it just yet. And the driver of his kind of quality, you'd think he'd settle into it by now, and that's obviously going to kind of prevent him from getting the high roller results that Lando Norris is currently getting. But yeah, he was kind of in that little kind of in the kind of middle phase of the race, that little DRS train that was kind of forming with the Ferraris, him, Gasly, Alonso, etc. And it was kind of hard for any of them to kind of pass. So yeah, so it was good strategy from McLaren to get him in earlier. And when did he stop? He pitted on lap 29, so kind of a standard stop really. Yeah, managed to get 6 points out of it. I mean, it's not bad. He was 3 seconds behind Perez in the end, so maybe if he was to hit a bit fresher tyres at the end, he could have overhauled the penalty that Perez has had. But it's a decent performance from him. I think we're still yet to see the best of the Honey Badger and the McLaren, and hopefully it's not too far away, because we all know how good of a driver he is and what he can do when he's like dialed into the car. I mean, Renault last year, he got 2 podiums out of a car that maybe was very not really there. I don't know. Yeah, I think by the summer break he should be dialed in really, but we'll see.
Yeah, I think the hope is around McLaren, because of course they're going to need him for this constructors battle with Ferrari. They need him to be scoring, exactly, up there with Lando. We move on to Charles Leclerc now, Philip. P8 after 2 trips through the gravel. Yeah, it's not a terrible result for Leclerc. He just couldn't seem to make the overtakes happen today. He was always applying the pressure, but just could not get that overtake. The crucial overtakes made today.
Yeah, it wasn't. It was unfortunate him and Checo were getting into it there today. But for consolidation, neither car made Q3, and in turn, also the strategy was actually better for Carlos Sainz, and he had to let him go too. So it almost was best case scenario. It's unfortunate. Charles Leclerc is one of the most aggressive drivers. He's one of the flashiest in terms of when he's out front. He can actually make things happen. It's a shame that this battle's kind of going on back end of the top 10. But for Ferrari, as you guys have been saying, as we've been saying, this is about McLaren, going after McLaren, trying to get there in the constructors. And when you consider how awful they were at Ricard, and to be back in a positive position after 2 races at Austria, there was, I don't know what happened at Paul Ricard. I mean, in a lot of ways, that's where they lost a lot of that points gap. That's where a lot of that gap came from. And so what will they do here in the next 2 races at Silverstone and at Hungary to try to bridge that gap? Can they claw back a little bit? Can they qualify a little better and hold that pace early on in those races. I think that's more what to look at. I mean, I think it was a good consolidation by Ferrari over both weekends, and Carlos Sainz is getting like what Sam said with Ricardo. Like at some point, I think it has to come along in qualifying. It's been awful on Saturdays for him. On Sundays, he's now starting to kind of take that turn, but Carlos Sainz has made that transition, and I think he's very comfortable, and I think Ferrari's very happy with the hire in Carlos Sainz, and he's been able to assimilate very well there and do what they need him to do. And if they build a better car for 2022, I think they're going to be in a prime position once again for the first time in a few years to actually contend, which will be good for the Tifosi and everybody. And I think Carlos Sainz will be in a prime position to finally contend for some podiums and multiple podiums and possibly a win. But that we'll see what that happens more next year. But for what they have right now, they're doing pretty well.
Yeah, it's it's building. They can't have as worse a year as they did last season, because that was truly awful. At least once you hit rock bottom, there's only one place to go, which is up. And I think it's clear to see from Ferrari that they are making those moves. It's sort of like get some drivers out of the way. Pierre Gasly P9, his teammate Yuki Tsunoda. It was a kind of very mixed day for AlphaTauri today, wasn't it, Sam? You had Gasly, I think he was on the two-stop strategy, trying to make that work, came home P9. And then Yuki Tsunoda getting a penalty every time he came into the pits for crossing the white line. Yeah, not once but twice. It was a bit of a mess.
Yeah, it's a bit of a mess, isn't it? I mean, to be fair to Yuki, the pit lane entry in Austria it just doesn't work, does it? Because it's on the racing line, and we saw in practice, there were just drivers tripping over each other constantly, and it's just an absolute mess down there. But yeah, Yuki is a weird one because he's got this like pure raw speed that's obviously really untapped, but he's just, I don't know, he just lacks kind of the discipline yet. He doesn't seem to listen to his race engineer either. Like, we always told him to shut up in Baku, was it, or somewhere? And yeah, I think he just needs to calm down a bit, really. I guess he is a teenager, he's young, got to give him time to, like, he's been fast tracked into this seat, really. He only did 1 year in F3, 1 year in F2, and you'd think really for a seat like AlphaTauri, you'd need at least 2 years experience in F2, kind of hone in your craft. But he's been kind of honed into that straight away. Maybe because of the Japanese connection to Honda, maybe for the branding, I'm not sure. But yeah, that was two pretty stupid mistakes, really. And obviously a slam dunk kind of penalty, which kind of destroyed any points he had of getting in the points, chance he had of getting in the points today. Because they looked like they had a quick car, because both of them qualified line astern in the top 10, looked there all weekend. Yeah, and as to Gasly, well, yeah, at least he wasn't taken out on the first lap today, like it was last week. That was stupid from Leclerc last week, honestly. But yeah, finished the race, 2 points, not bad. Yeah, as you said, two-stop strategy wasn't really the way to go, I don't think, especially in a car like that. Yeah, 2 points. Can't ask so much more really than that for him. He's had better days for sure. That's all I've got to say for them, really. It was kind of a weird day for them. I don't know. It's odd.
Yeah, as I said, like, it's very mixed. Now on to Alpine. Well, there's only really one driver you can talk about in Alpine today, Philip. You had Fernando Alonso. He managed to nick 10th at the end, while Esteban Ocon was really unfortunate with that first lap incident. It was just only a slight nudge from, I think it was one of the Alfa Romeos, just broke his either steering arm or his suspension arm off the
toe link or something. Yeah, Fred's race weekend was ruined on Saturday anyway, by the queue and the stupidity by the stewards anyway. He had pace, but he was stuck in traffic, and they're in the DRS train, so he really had nothing. Unfortunately, he was able. It's the fandom comes out in me that I say unfortunately, even though I respect Fernando Alonso for how great he is and what he's done, but he got the 1 point there to basically so whatever to take whatever they could get out of the weekend because their long-term future. I mean, it wasn't his fault today by any means, but he has not been ever since he got his extension. Ocon has been pretty mediocre. I wouldn't have been making that signing at that point. I think between the fact you have Guan Yu Zhou, who has a possibility to win a F2 championship, the fact you have a French driver in Pierre Gasly who has proven to be at a level that could maybe take an Alpine to the next level. I don't understand how you go and hedge and you sign Esteban Ocon, but whatever. I don't know. Maybe they see something that other people, there might be other people that do. But for Fernando Alonso to get the 1 point after what happened to him in qualifying, I guess that's best case scenario. I don't know. I guess the start, he usually is good on starts. He probably didn't get the greatest. I don't know. We'll see what happens at a more open racetrack at Silverstone for that team. Their battle is they're in kind of no man's land right now, where I think they're trying to run with Aston Martin and I'm forgetting what other team it is, but and with AlphaTauri, yeah. So they're running in that kind of battle for fifth in the constructors, but they don't really have it every single week. So when they have it, it's like Fernando Alonso's been taking steps forward here in recent weeks. You can't lose those opportunities. So I guess we'll see what happens over the next couple of races before the break for Alonso, and if Esteban Ocon wakes up from hibernation.
Yeah, it was a poor quali, and we didn't really get to see what he's going to do in the race, but sort of with the way that the race went, I don't think we would have seen too much from him. Right, Sam, onto George Russell and Williams. He's come close to points with the Williams before, but I don't think he's ever come this close. 3 laps from the end to be overtaken by Fernando Alonso. It's soul-crushing for all George Russell fans. Thinking, he's in 10th for so long, and it just so close.
Yeah, just pain, just pure pain. That's all I can say for that. Yeah, it's oh man, qualifying P8 in the Williams is incredible. Man, that was such a good job yesterday to get in Q3. He lost places off the start, which he I don't know. I guess when you're driving the second worst car in the grid, you're going to lose places at start to better cars going all the way around you. We saw Vettel going past him, Leclerc, Sainz at the start. You kind of expect that to happen when you're driving a Williams, but you did really want him to kind of finally get that break. I know he scored points for Mercedes technically last year, but this Williams point is really needed for him and the team. And I was willing him on at the end there. I was willing Alonso just to leave him alone but obviously he's not going to do that, as you said. I don't know when they're going to get chance for points again, because this track seemed to suit George. Well, obviously George is taking the car to places it probably doesn't really belong. This track seems to suit him and the car really well. Very unlucky last week to not score points with his problem. And then today, it was a tough one to take for us all, I think, really, because we're all big George Russell fans, and we want him to. I think secretly we all want him to be announced for Mercedes in the coming days, but we'll just have to see what happens.
Yeah, I think that is the dream. He's completely outperforming that car. I think we can all completely agree with that. Latifi 15th today really was never in the question, either in qualifying or in the race. But it was so close, but still get so far.
Yeah.
Just got to pray that something happens later on in the season and he can get that first point for Williams. Because if he does sign for Mercedes, I think he'll want to leave Williams, at least give him something. He doesn't want to sort of leave after 3 years of no points for them. We've already touched on Yuki Tsunoda, Philip, so we'll move on to the Aston Martins. You had Lance Stroll, he inherited 13th. He was 15th before the crash between Raikkonen and Vettel, and then Vettel, of course, didn't finish, but still finished ahead of the Haas cars. But
not a great day for the Aston Martin duo. The soft tire situation kind of basically set them up for failure, and then they really couldn't make up places after that. I figured that Seb would be able to make a little bit more progress, but unfortunately, the traffic, unable to make DRS, whatever. They didn't have enough pace this weekend. They've had pace at other races here in recent times, but just an unfortunate throwaway weekend for the Aston Martin duo. Stroll, was Stroll, and then that's I really don't know what to say. I mean, so it wasn't a double non-point score when you have the Gasly scoring points. You had Alonso getting 1 point. It's gonna be a seesaw battle the whole way between those three teams, because each team has certain circuits, I think, that suit them. So I think it's just going to go back and forth. We're going to be talking about the Alpines in this spot at other shows, or we're going to be talking about the AlphaTauris in this spot at certain tracks too. So throwaway weekend for the Aston Martins, but they're going to have their home game next race literally right next door to their factory. So for Vettel to go and race at the British Grand Prix for a theoretically British team, but really, and then all that stuff. So we'll see what they bring out there.
Yeah, as you said, I've been to the factory. It was Racing Point when I went, but yeah, it is literally right across the way from the Silverstone entrance. Now move on to Alfa Romeo. Sam, 14th for Antonio Giovinazzi. Again, he inherited that after the crash. Nothing really to shout home about. But Kimi Räikkönen, that incident with Vettel was quite bizarre. Räikkönen had locked up going into turn 4, trying to overtake Russell. Vettel then used that as an opportunity to go up the inside of him. Vettel looked like he was just sort of driving his normal line, and Kimi went into him. But how did you see that?
Yeah, I kind of agree with you. It's really kind of really clumsy for like two drivers of the experience that those two have. It's kind of a clumsy incident. They look quite nasty actually, because like when I first saw obviously because we were watching Max take the checkered flag. And then there was a yellow flag in Sector 2, saw Sebastian Vettel just tumbling down the table. I was like, oh God, what's happened here? And then when they showed it, it looked like, just Kimi. Obviously, Kimi was trying to overtake George Russell, couldn't quite get past him into the hairpin. So obviously he was a bit offset by that. And then obviously Seb's just seen that as, I'll go around the outside here. But maybe he just hasn't checked his mirrors, or maybe Kimi's just not realised that Seb was there and just kind of drove into him. And then they've T-boned each other. And they've ended up in a gravel track, and I think they've still been classified as finishers of the race because it was on the final lap.
Yeah, they have been. Vettel, Kimi came home 16th, and Vettel he did DNF. However, he has classified above both Haas cars, so he will finish 17th.
There's no break for Haas this year, but it's quite fortunate that either of them were hurt really, because it could have been quite a nasty accident, but thankfully they ended up in a gravel track on the side there. I mean, they weren't fighting for anything really meaningful, really, were they? They were just kind of scrapping for 15th, 16th, I don't know.
It would have been P12 when they
12.
crashed.
Okay, so 12. Okay, a bit more meaningful, but no points. So it was kind of just a really silly, unnecessary incident that didn't need to happen. Probably more leaning towards Kimi's fault, personally.
Next is the two Haas cars, and honestly, I don't want to put either of you through the pain of having to talk about Haas.
I'll do it
if you want to, but
I don't mind.
Mick Schumacher in P18, Nikita Mazepin 50 seconds. Right, it's all this 50 seconds behind his teammate in 19th. Like, okay. What do you want to say about that?
Take it away.
Well, I mean, they usually works out that it gets thrown to me anyway, because I'm just going to say something about Putin Haas, so that's what I'll do. The fact of the matter is, they were there. They're there because Formula One expects them to show up to every Grand Prix. I mean, Mick Schumacher learning trying to build on his experience in a load, and he's doing his thing. They both ended up 2 laps down in the race, but the main thing is the fact that he beat Egghead nearly by a lap in the same car after they had a full Grand Prix weekend a week ago at the same racetrack, and I think he did exactly the same thing last week too. So the progression, it's mini steps, it's mini victories for Mick. Certain tracks, I think that he knows these tracks, but I think driving him in an F1 car, there's different different feelings, different things he has to adjust to. He's cleaning himself up. He had a couple of rough weeks, but now he's kind of getting back into his form. And then, Egghead didn't spin, I don't think. He didn't run over anything or anybody. He didn't get into any assault and battery incidents. So Vladdy will probably get him a provider for that in between now and the British Grand Prix. So I guess good for him. His daddy will probably get him a cookie too.
That's cookie for breakfast.
Right, so that's it. That's all 2020 drivers. We've gotten through that. So now it's time for us to pick our driver of the day. Officially, it did go to Lando Norris, but Sam, who are you saying for?
It was a decent race. I'd say it was a better race than last week. There was more to sink your teeth into in terms of driver of the day. It's kind of hard to look past Norris really, because Verstappen was just in a world of his own. I guess he didn't really have much to do really all day. So it looked like just a nice leisurely Sunday afternoon drive for him around the Austrian mountains. I'd say it's got to be Lando Norris really, because he held Hamilton off for a great amount of time, put his car in right positions, stayed just in DRS, managed to just get him where he wanted, but it was only because his tyres were kind of going off that Lewis managed to get past him. And then after that, he still finishes on the podium, P3. I believe that's his 3rd podium.
Yeah, this season.
3rd. And just a year on from his first podium in Austria in the first race here last year. So it's got to be Lando Norris.
Philip, driver of the day.
Yeah, I'm gonna echo Sam. I'm going with Lando. Great weekend. He's the only driver that's scored in every race so far this season too, which is pretty darn good. He is taking a step like Max is taking his step and he's going to win the world championship. But Lando has taken a step forward in year 3, brand new teammate with a new power unit provider. And he has taken a step to show that, he's going to be a factor in the next few years in the world championship. Like his buddies have been around, Charles Leclerc has had his moments. He's won Grand Prix as well. I think the days are going to come where Lando's going to be able to get to that point. Georgie Boy will hopefully get into a proper car and have that opportunity soon too. So, we'll see the super best friends. All of them will be all competitive and feeling good here, hopefully, and as the races and the years go on. But this weekend was just amazing by Lando Norris and McLaren. They've taken a great step forward, so credit to him and the team.
I'm going to go slightly off piste with my driver of the day. I'm going to give it to Carlos Sainz. Starting P10, made the alternative strategy worked really well. Went really deep into the race on those hard tyres. Then when he came out on the mediums with a bit of help from, of course, his teammate letting him past, he did manage to get past Daniel Ricardo and then managed to get within 10 seconds of Prez to take advantage and get a really crucial sort of haul of points for Ferrari, especially after quite a messy qualifying. So, my driver of the day would be Carlos Sainz.
Good. It would be boring if we had the same one. So it's good. It's good.
Got to do something. Got to do something.
You got to make it an interesting for everybody.
Yeah.
I was thinking of going with George, honestly, but then if he had gotten a point, I would have went with George.
I think we all might have.
It would have been all George then if he got a point. That would have made the weekend perfect, really.
Yeah.
But, you can't have everything you want in life.
Yeah.
Yeah. That is all from us today. We will be back for the British Grand Prix in 2 weeks' time. So make sure to look out for the preview. That's going to probably come out in about a week. And then, we'll be doing qualifying and race reviews for that Grand Prix as well. If you're listening to this show, we do live stream all of our shows on YouTube. So make sure to subscribe to the F1 Chronicle just so you can see all the shows early, and you can also ask us questions after the show. We're also available on Spotify, Apple Music, Amazon Music, Google Podcasts, Pocket Casts, OmniStudio, Verbal, as well as the F1 Chronicle website. Just search for the F1 Grid Talk podcast. We have a huge back catalogue of shows, so if you're stuck for something to listen to in the very long 2-week break now that we have until the next Grand Prix, we have over 100 shows that you can listen to, not just race and qualifying reviews, but also an interview with Mario Zola from Pirelli, as well as more documentary style shows such as ones about Tiregate, Ayrton Senna, and the 1994 Benetton conspiracy. So make sure to check them out. Also, if you give us a 5-star review on iTunes, then we'll give you a shout out in our next show. All feedback on our podcast is much appreciated. Thank you guys so much for being on the show today.
No worries.
Thanks, man. Thanks for hosting.
Thank you,
Louis.
Yeah, thank you guys for listening or watching. And we'll be back for the British Grand Prix in 2 weeks' time. Goodbye.